In this podcast, we talk to Pesach Hirsch, an anti-Zionist Jew who is part of the Neturei Karta. We talked about Israel.
We don't sort of peace missions, as it were, towards Hamas and also to Hezbollah. It's to bring about peace. So you can't just give back all the land. It's done by that. There could be a bloodbath of revenge. I don't think the average Israeli soldier is deliberately targeting children. You know, it's like children are killed in the crossfire. I still remember something very cold about the Zionist official who interviewed me. There was something very cold about, like cold and soulless.
We talked about Lev Tahar.
You studied that?
Yes, I did, yeah. I said when they were in Barrow Park and when they were in Monsey. I was there when the FBI raided.
You were there? On the premises?
Sorry, yes, I was.
We talked about Russia's invasion into Ukraine.
Zelensky was threatened to be hanged if he dare make peace with Putin.
Because there are countries that are okay with Putin and okay with Russia, that's still invading, that's still a war.
And although I disagree with most of what Pesach says in this podcast, I respect him for coming on and standing up for what he believes in.
Hello, Pesach.
Hello.
You are a Jewish anti-Zionist who is part of Neturei Karta.
Yeah,
and
I'm
you,
associated with Karta, yeah.
And you went to a Palestine parade and shouted Allahu Akbar three or four times. Why did you do that?
That's the one that got like 100,000 views on TikTok, isn't it?
Yeah, on TikTok.
Yeah.
That's
So
a snippet of the original video.
Yeah, how come you...
Why did you do that?
Why? Why? The two questions: why was I there at all at such a demonstration, and also why did I
shout
God is great?
Yeah.
The thing, first of all, God is great, because we say as well. Kel Gibor is what part of is it in Psalms?
I don't know, but do you not...
Kel Gibor means God is great.
Yeah.
Right. God is mighty. Right. So there's nothing wrong in saying that, religiously, and also it's important to show that it's not a religious fight between the Islamic religion and Jewish religion. It's a political thing that's been caused by politicians. This animosity between Jews and Arabs and Jews and Muslims. It's nothing to do. There's no inherent fight between reason why religious Jews and religious Muslims should feel bad towards one another. There's nothing. It's a very sharp way of showing that it's not that hundreds of Muslims have no problem to answer. When I say takbir, that they have no problem to answer. Like it's like a call to prayer. They say God is great. That shows that they don't have an issue with Jews per se. It's
about the point about shouting Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That is a clear way of showing it's not a religious fight between Jews and Muslims. It's been caused by politicians.
So if there was a Muslim or someone else,
animosity.
Yes, if there was a Muslim or someone else that went up and said God is great in Hebrew, would you think that's totally okay?
For sure, 100%. Yeah. God is great. It says in the end times everyone will recognise God is great and there's one God, right? That's what will happen at the end times. So it's very good.
So you believe Palestine...
Just to explain to everyone who's listening, you believe that Palestine should have a right to exist, or just to explain to everyone?
I believe that Jews can live in the Holy Land. Obviously part of the Holy Land, thank God, is not under the Zionists. It's in South Lebanon, and the Lebanese and the poor Irish man may rest in peace. I'm sure hopefully he's got a place in heaven now in the afterlife, a good place for protecting the Holy Land from the Zionists. The Irish member of NATO, as an Irish forces, he got killed about a month ago, a couple of weeks to a month ago, defending, protecting, keeping peace in the south of Lebanon. It's like, I believe that Jews can live in the Holy Land if they, first of all, only if they're keeping the Torah properly, if they're properly religious. At least the Holy Land, you don't want to desecrate the Holy Land, and they have to behave righteously, and also with permission from the Gentiles that are ruling the land at the time, but not to have sovereignty over the land. And
so you believe Palestine should have complete rule of the entire country?
I believe that Gentiles, whether it's the Turkish, whether it's Arabs, whether it's Arabs or not.
It's just that Jews shouldn't be in control.
Jews should not be in control.
It doesn't matter how.
There with permission of the Gentiles and recognise that they're the boss there.
So currently what we have is Israel controls. Do you think there should be a one-state solution, two-state solution, or you just want Jewish people out?
A one-state solution. Yeah. It's not. But in the meantime, it's like if the people say sometimes how can total to get involved in politics, and it's not politics. So it's like. We don't sort of peace missions, as it were, towards Hamas and also to Hezbollah and also to and also to Fatah, the people in the West Bank. They're all different parties, and they have different, one is Shia Muslim, one is Sunni Muslim. It just show generally that there's nothing between Muslims, any type of Muslim, and Jews. There's no reason to have animosity between these groups. The problems has all been brought about through Zionism. I'm not saying it was like all completely rosy before the Zionists came over 100 years ago and started to encourage a mass immigration into what was then called, obviously it was called Palestine. It was called Palestine. People like to say there's no Palestinian, like, as it were, state with a Palestinian king, but I can deal with that another time in the conversation, but as I tend to go off on a tangent, I'll sit this bit here. But when they brought mass immigration in there, before that happened, Jews as a general rule, we lived there.
So why on all the other Jews? If it says this, why on all the other Jews? If it says this, then in the Torah, that it says in the Jewish Bible, really, that you can only really have you can only have a Jewish state once those 2 points are made. Like you said, everyone's religious and they don't have complete sovereignty, if I'm right.
Only have a Jewish state?
So only have a Jewish state if you made 2 points before that should apply if Israel was
just to live in the Holy Land.
Yeah.
Not to have a state.
So why do so many people believe that we should have a Jewish state, and why do so many Jews believe believe against you and don't agree with what you're saying?
Well, they've been the further you go back in time, the more people remembered the correct position regarding the Zionist state and Zionism, but slowly we've been softened down over time. It was the mainstream Haredi opinion. It used to be the mainstream Haredi opinion. In a way, it still is. Nobody with a black hat and side lots. I'm not saying that guarantees a good Jew in terms of what's going on in his heart, but nobody will say they're a Zionist if they've got. It's like, it's not because Zionism is primarily like an atheistic movement. It's because it's the fact is now there is a state. There's different ways of handling it. Many rabbis say can't just give back all the land. The Zionists cannot just hand back all the land to the Arabs, because if it was done like that, there could be a bloodbath of revenge, and they won't differentiate between Zionist military and people dwelling in the Holy Land. The majority of people dwelling in the Zionist state now are not there because they're Zionists. They're there because they're maybe 20-30% descended from the community of 20,000 that were there, of the religious community that was there in mid-1890s, when there was like 500,000 Arabs. There was 20,000 Jews. That was the Turkish census of somewhere in the middle of the 1890s. Because 20-30% are descended from them, and the majority of the rest were manipulated after the Holocaust, which many Zionist leadership helped to promote, because they needed millions of Jews to be slaughtered in order to claim to be the savior. I mean, there's actually a Lubavitch rabbi called the Rav Zimmer who was in the DP camps after the Holocaust, the poor people who'd survived the camps, and they're looking where to go. Many of them didn't want to go back to their countries they were from in Europe, because many locals happily helped out. I'm not saying it was the majority, but there were many locals who happily helped out.
I'm just wondering a point about Israel.
The threat of being killed. So they were in DP camps and they were bullied only to go to Palestine. The Zionists bullied them.
No, yeah, so
this Lubavitcher wrote a test.
I understand that. Just a question on Palestine.
It's historically documented.
Just a question on Palestine.
Rather than go to America or England or other countries.
Yeah, just a question on Palestine.
Manipulated to go there.
Yeah.
So the majority of them living there are not there because they were Zionists.
Yeah.
But once they're there, they get indoctrinated with the whole Zionist ideology.
Yeah, so just a question on Palestine. You like you said, you don't want it to be a Jewish state. So
you can't be Jewish state, because Jewish means you have to follow to be according to the Torah.
Yeah,
Jewish.
You don't want it to be run by Jewish people. You don't want it to be run by Jewish people altogether. You want Jewish people to be living in that state, right?
I want them to. If they want to live there, they can ask like any other country, or seek permission of the Gentiles that are ruling the land.
Yeah. So
and by default, it's the Arabs that. nobody else. Regarding the West Bank, someone thought to ask: has Jordan given up on? Take it back, because they one point had they can have control of the West Bank, Jordan. So now they've just given up and taken it back again, or for us to promote, for Neturei Karta to promote, say, a state of Palestinians which includes the West Bank. Maybe Jordan want it back.
So my question, I understand what you're saying. My question isn't particularly on the West Bank, but I'm saying if the Neturei Karta, and the Neturei Karta side with the Palestinians to make sure that Gentiles rule Israel.
The Karta, the rabbis, except for this freak minority movement called religious Zionism, started by, which Cook had a large part in, forming, 100 or so years ago. It's like the main rabbis of Jerusalem in the 1920s, there's photos of them standing there with the Arab leadership to show them that the Zionists do not represent us. We're happy to live there peacefully under your control, and the Zionists have nothing to do with us. This used to be much more mainstream.
I understand that.
Down. Yes, they say it's a freak minority now told them to the Karta. In fact, Satmar, the only difference is, which is about about 20% or so of the Haredi community, maybe there's 1 million Haredi, that's the word, black hat Jews. 20% of that, they easily, perhaps, is about Satmar Chassidim. The only difference between them and Neturei Karta is the way we demonstrate. They feel that going by demonstrating alongside non-Jews, it could imply, especially Muslim or Arab non-Jews, it could imply that you support military, like the ways of, as it were.
No, so my question is very close to this point.
To the problem.
Yeah,
they feel it could give the wrong impression. That's why they don't demonstrate. Not they don't hold.
I understand. Yeah, so my question is...
It's Bobov, it's Tver, they all hold 100% along the same position as the Satmar.
Yeah, I understand that. So my question is very, very close to this. Yeah, my question is that if you're siding with the Palestinians to make it a one-state solution, do you not think that because you can see directly, there's a direct correlation when Palestinians have attacks into Israel, then there's more anti-Semitism in the UK and around the world.
When Palestinians
when there's any chaos or riots between Palestinians and Israel, there's a direct correlation between that and anti-Semitism around the world. Do you not think by siding...
It's not really riots between Palestinians and Israel. You mean when the Israeli army bombs Gaza or bombs...
do you not think by what you're siding on, do you not think that's might lead on to more anti-Semitism around the world, or you don't think so?
You mean there are some Gentiles who like to paint all Jews with the same brush, and hold us to account, as it were, for not speaking up when the Zionist military...
No, literally, when anything happens in Israel between Palestine, you actually see a direct correlation of what...
You mean when the Zionist bomb... putting aside Hamas firing their missiles over, which I think don't kill many people at all. They're quite... they're not exactly very high tech. But I'm saying, when the Zionist army goes there and murders hundreds or thousands, the civilians get killed as well, not just... Hamas operatives. I'm not going to say the word militant, but Hamas operatives, because I'm not done getting the whole argument about freedom fighter and this and one man's terrorist.
No, but
essentially, when that happens and Arabs lose their lives.
No, but Israel warned everyone before it happens.
People are holding Jews in general to account for not speaking up.
No, but Israel warned everyone before that happens.
You can say,
Doesn't Israel the Israeli army warn people before they bomb any place?
They say so. Yeah.
Do you not believe that?
You don't think they do it?
Sorry?
Do you not believe that they actually warn?
There's certain sections of the Zionist army that I've heard that don't care at all about Arab civilians being killed. I mean, I'm not saying it's a majority at all of Israeli soldiers, but the average Israeli soldier is just doing their national service, which they're pressured to do. Otherwise, basically, they don't have a life. They can't get a job. They can't, and they've been brainwashed with a version of accounts that they've done no justice to the local populace over the last 70, 80 years. They don't realise what they're doing is an injustice. Even it's. I actually said that at a demonstration once. I was once in Newcastle. There was a anti-Israel demonstration, and this was about 25 years ago. And the community nearby had been told, don't go into town that day. There's a big anti-Israel demonstration, anti-Zionist demonstration, and it could be dangerous. And I thought, if that's the case, then who's there to monitor what they're saying? It's important to check they don't veer into speaking against Jews in general as opposed to opposition to the Zionist regime. Yeah. So I went there just to hear what they had to say. And it's funny because one of the leadership, if not the main leader of that demonstration, the Muslim leader of the demonstration, he seemed to be surprised that there was a Jew there. So maybe maybe the police, whatever, some of them thought there were going to be no Jews there to witness what's being said. So he asked me if I have any issue with what's been said. I said, yeah, I'm here. I'm against there being a state of Israel, but I don't think the average Israeli soldier is deliberately targeting children. It's like children are killed in the crossfire, can get killed in the crossfire. But to say they're deliberately targeting children, it's reminiscent also of blood libel, I think, isn't it? Sort of just spilling Gentile blood. It's like, and there's certain people who try to influence, with like the protocols, the Elders Desire, which was, I believe, was a Zionist, and the people who started Zionism, the Masonic movement that started Zionism, which was not Jewish, they organised that, and that's been very popular in a lot of Arab countries that are very upset with what the Zionists are doing, naturally, and it's like, and that affects their outlook towards Jews. It does them a disservice as well. It doesn't help to bring about a solution to be influenced by thinking like Jews are taking over the world, and it's part of the Zionism, it's part of some bigger Jewish plan at the expense of non-Jews. So that gets in the way of bringing about peace between the
Yeah.
Do you ever think there can be peace between Palestine and Israel in a two-state solution?
But he doesn't want a two-state
solution.
No,
if they're happy, they've said already, I think over 20 years ago, that if they get back the whole of the West Bank and also in Gaza and whole of East Jerusalem and
it's a lot of places.
It's basically the entire place.
And a right of return for all those, from the bit in the middle, basically.
Yeah.
And they'll
so if they have
be like a long-term ceasefire. In the meantime, at least it will stop the bloodshed. But it's not in Jewish law. It's not a solution because there's still the Jews not have sovereignty in any part of the Holy Land. It's like we're not at sovereignty anywhere. We're not allowed to have a sovereign country anywhere. We're in exile. We have to be like gypsies, basically. We don't have a country. We're countryless. We're in exile. So if it's something that in the meantime at least will, stop the bloodshed, both sides, then why not? But I can't say it's a complete solution because the complete solution is when there's no more Zionist state at all of any size.
You understand that?
Someone actually told me here in Prestwich. I was at a Kiddush on Shabbos. That's is it primarily Jewish?
It's all different.
So I'm going to explain what Kiddush. Maybe you can.
So it's a gathering.
It's a Jewish gathering.
Sabbath, celebrated the birth of a daughter. I think it was a bar mitzvah, and somebody came up to me. His child had been a week before had been sort of ridiculing me, and he apologised. And he also told me that the Chazon Ish had said that. Heard of the Chazon Ish, obviously.
Yeah.
He said that the Messiah will not take the keys of the Holy Land from the Zionist state, from the Zionists, meaning there will be somebody else ruling in the Holy Land prior to Mashiach Tam. And there's another source, I can't remember where it was from, that the Zionist state has to cease to exist before Messiah can come. It shouldn't look like he's coming on the shoulders, like somehow the Zionist state was some preparation on the way. Like they call it in Hebrew, like it's some preparation on the way, even though it's inherently wrong to have a state. There's some religious people who've thought maybe even so it's somehow a step on the way to, I think the people who hold, like Rabbi Cook held, think it's a step on the way to the correct redemption. So it's there was one big rabbi said no, it shouldn't look like that. It shouldn't look as if somehow this terrible entity is some stepping stone on the way to the correct solution, correct.
So you believe ultimately that
which is when
you believe ultimately that Israel will belong to the Jews then, ultimately.
That's a good question because I was at another demonstration I was at. I think it was in Hyde Park. It was a march from
Do you go to a lot of demonstrations?
The occupied Palestinian embassy, the Israeli embassy.
Do you go to a lot of demonstrations?
Maybe once
every couple of
months. Not 3 or 4 times a month, but once every few months maybe at most. And someone said in Hyde Park that we heard that you're against the state now, but when the Messiah comes, you believe that all the Arabs will be slaughtered. And I said not at all. So when the Messiah comes, it's anyone who behaves righteously, whether it's a Jew or a Gentile, can dwell in the Holy Land. It's holy. You have to be extra careful on your behaviour to behave correctly because it's Holy Land. It's the sanctity of the Holy Land. And he also said that, and you believe we'll all be your slaves. And I said no, so I'm not going to lie, But he says we believe that of all the nations, the Muslims will be worthy. They'll deserving of being assistants of Jews, not slaves like with the whip and against the will. They'll want to help and be helpers of Jews. It means an assistant, like a personal assistance of Jews. And for example, I say if it happens that your version of events are right and Islam will be taking over the whole world, I don't mind being a servant of you in the sense of I'm happy to be helpful towards a righteous person. It's like if that's I can understand why a lot of Gentiles would not want to be helpful towards Jews who behave like many Zionists behave, but a Jew behaves.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by how many Zionists behave?
Towards the indigenous population in
how do we? What's so bad? What do they do?
Treat them like second-class citizens, and people may say that so-called Israeli Arabs are not treated exactly the same as Jewish citizens of the state.
Yes,
and
it's very interesting. Do you mind
if we go? Gaza and the West Bank, and although they say it's for security reasons, it's not.
Do you mind if we go? Because it's very interesting, all your views, because obviously it's very different from what a lot of the people think. Are we able to talk about your journey? Would you be interested in talking about from how young?
From a secular Jew to
not religious Jew.
Yeah.
So how did you start off? Where were you born, or what were you like there? What family?
I was born near Stamford Hill in North East London. My parents were already living.
That's a very, very Jewish, very Jewish neighbourhood, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But we weren't living there. There was just a maternity hospital there that a lot of religious Jewish community used.
So you're born up.
And it was near where my mother's mother lived in Warwick Grove, which is in Stamford Hill. And
so were you born in a liberal family, or?
Not at all observant. No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not even Yom Kippur. But then there was no synagogue. The nearest synagogue was 20 miles away in Wennington City, and even that was conservative and this type of reform, and wasn't orthodox. And I thought somehow maybe the rabbi of the community was a conservative counsellor as well as being a rabbi. I didn't know such thing as reform and conservative. I thought they're Jews, and either they're practicing the Judaism or they're sadly not practicing. At the time, I didn't realise that it's sadly not practicing. You know, I was brought up, and we kept Christmas, and we didn't keep Jewish festivals, but not in a Christian way. Like to give presents, have a Christmas tree with lights, and so I still feel what's the word? What's the word? Not sympathetic. There's a word for reminiscent. It's still around Christmas time.
A connection. You've got a connection.
I still have sentimental, whatever. I feel. Yeah, but it wasn't done in a Christian way. There was no crosses on the tree, and there was no. And we brought it very strongly that.
How did you change
Jesus
against?
That Jews don't recognise that it wasn't the Messiah. So I went to primary school and secondary school primarily with virtually everyone I knew were Gentile and not.
How did you grow out of that and change to being what you are today?
So I met a rabbi when I was in university, the chaplain in Lancaster University.
And what age was this?
That was at 1920. So I started a year late. I had an operation when I was 17 for my Crohn's disease. So I started university a year late, and I had a scholarship from GEC Marconi, EEV, the English Electric Valve Company. And sadly, during my first year, my Crohn's and other issues propped up, and I didn't even complete my first year. Despite having 3 A's of being a C at A level. 3 A's of being a T? Yeah, it was technically 3 A's of being a C, even though a lot of those were in the same subject. It was like further maths and then S paper in physics as well as.
So what did the rabbi tell you?
So he organised my first keeping of the Sabbath. We went down on the train together to Manchester from Lancaster, and I was in the Hillel House in Manchester.
How did he convince you? How did he convince you?
I didn't take much convincing because I never had any.
So you just wanted to try.
I wanted to see that.
Just a new experience.
I know it's part of my heritage. It's part of my heritage. It's that my great grandfather was a very religious Jew. He was the shammers. He was like the caretaker, but more than just caretaker, not caretaker.
So after you had
the floor, he was like it's the had a big position in the Machzik Ladas in the East End of London before the war.
So after you tried that first Shabbos, how did it go?
Yeah, I wanted to have.
Oh, so that really propelled you.
It was a bit of a gap being in Lancaster University and not, and being by myself. It was like I couldn't then go from there, and then it was I didn't have really the support to take it up straight away. But within a year or so after leaving university, so a year or so up, it was after in the middle of my first year. Sorry about that. About a year after that, I went to Osmerich
so already from a year from already not being so religious, you became really, really religious within a year.
Well, it was like to a stage where it's like no going back sort of thing.
Okay.
I wanted to.
And what did your family think of that?
My parents' main concern was I need to finish my secular education.
When you told them that you weren't going to?
Yeah, they said no problem going to yeshiva, but to pursue my religious education, but I should also finish. It shouldn't be the expense of me not finishing my degree, and I still haven't finished my degree. But
what did they say when you didn't do your degree?
Sorry about that. That's why I stopped it.
Take out your phone if you want to put it on Do Not Disturb.
Put it on silent.
I'm just wondering about your parents. If they,
yeah.
if your parents are really happy how you've turned out, because you're really secular when you were younger. Now you're
I'm secular, but
not anti-religious.
I'm not at all anti-religious. I had a bar mitzvah. My father took me 20 miles on the train.
But compared to, are they proud of how you now?
And to have a bar mitzvah. So I had a bar mitzvah. My father had no need to fill in towards.
Because some people feel like if their children don't go around the journey that they're going, they feel like they might disown them or something. But if your parents were really happy with you and they just whatever you wanted to do, they just wanted to make.
Yeah, I was happy like that.
That's really great. That's amazing.
That was their main concern.
Came from there, so
my mother's parents were very religious, but she was sent to a Christian family as a little doll because of the bombing in London, the Blitz, and that was as an orphan. And they were very nice to her, but my mother was traumatised. Somebody was very nasty to my mother when she was a little girl, and that left her nervous basically the rest of her life.
What, anti-Semitic to her?
No, in terms of abuse.
Oh.
So the family that looked after my mother, the Christian family, we grew up calling her auntie. The mother that was a mother to my during the war years. So mother moved up into their family about 9-10 years old, but she's originally from a religious family, so her father passed on, was passed on in like 36, 37, and then like when the war started, the Blitz, and my mother went to this Christian family, and I think Norwood Centre, that's a Jewish orphanage, they sent her to this Christian family, and so we grew up calling the mother of that family who looked after my mother, we called her auntie. So we lived about 20 miles away in Hitchin, and that was in was Hertford, not Hatfield, Cambridge, something too. I think it was Hertford was where they lived, and but somebody else in that community had been very nasty to my mother, and only found out that after I'd left for university, where my mother was seen to be highly strung, on edge person. It left her very traumatised. It affected her very severely. But my father's whole family moved to Taunton in Somerset. So again, my father's religious education my father would have stayed at least keeping the Sabbath and the kosher diet, and
so just about you.
If it wasn't for their family having to move to the countryside during the war, because there was no real
there's no connection then. Yeah. No, so for you, so you went into that yeshiva, and how did you go from there to progress to become more and more religious, and become really religious, and then change different directions to what you're brought up in, or whether it's Israel versus Palestine, and all these different points? So where did you go from there?
Well, I've always, regarding Zionism, it was within a couple of years. That's right. The first. Well, I had no feelings like positive towards Zionism. Didn't really know what Zionism was even growing up, because I grew up in a Gentile community, not in a secular Jewish community, any religious Jewish community, as it were. We call it community, but I mean amongst Jews that weren't really practicing. I didn't have any feeling towards sort of Zionism or Israel. Or I actually thought I knew there was a country called Israel, and it was primarily sort of run by Jewish people.
Yeah.
And actually sort of studied there. I was offered to study the Technion. It's rather than go to Lancaster. I was applying to Oxford as well, but I thought maybe go and study at the Technion Institute. That's one of the top places in the world for engineering. So I was interviewed, and there was something about that. I still remember something very cold about the Zionist official who interviewed me. There was something very cold about, like cold and soulless about this person. Like now I realise he's been a complete victim of the whole Zionist indoctrination.
Could that not just be from your perspective? Could that not just be from your perspective? When people have a certain perspective, everything they see fits into that perspective.
I'll tell you why it isn't, because one of the clearest examples of why that isn't the case, because even the language Ivrit, which they speak, which has nothing to do with the holy tongue, Lashon HaKodesh, which is the holy tongue, the biblical Hebrew. People say it's just biblical Hebrew with the Sephardic pronunciation, which is also a load of nonsense. It's a new pronunciation as well. Professor Ben Yehud was an actual anti-Semite, the one who developed Ivrit, and it was with the aim of corrupting Jews and making them secular and atheistic. It wasn't.
How do you know?
But I'll tell you why, because the same Rabbi Or Zimmer, this Lubavitch rabbi who was in the DP camps, who witnessed Jews being pressured to go only to Palestine and support the Zionist cause and settlement there, as opposed to go to England, America, France, Canada, other countries. The same rabbi documented in this booklet that he wrote in the 50s that a Gentile professor of linguistics, of languages, he analysed very closely, very deeply Ivrit, the modern so-called Hebrew, the language of the Zionist state, and he analysed the Lashon HaKodesh, the biblical Hebrew. And even though a lot of the majority of the words are rooted in the original Hebrew words, obviously they're used out of context in ways they're not supposed to be used as well. He said it's as if this in modern what they call modern Hebrew Ivrit, as if they're taking this Gentile professor of linguistics said, no, not a Jewish person, not a religious Jewish, a Gentile professor of linguistics, as if they've taken the soul and the Shema out of biblical Hebrew.
Yeah.
It had been defiled, it had been stripped of its tradition, of its holiness. And this is a professor of linguistics, and this is a Lubavitch rabbi wrote in the Sefer.
That doesn't mean they're specifically trying to make it anti-religious.
To corrupt us, which is, I mean,
did a Jew write that?
Mainstream position. The Zionists wanted the state, they didn't make influence Jews not to be religious to have a state. The state is for the purpose of shmut, of to secularize the Jewish people. Even the people who are religious, that they've slowly wormed their way into the religious communities and corrupted religious communities. I mean, even to take money for like subsidization for Jewish colleges and yeshivas, it corrupts because you feel indebted to the one that's paying the money.
Did you ever study in Israel?
I studied in Osamech for.
So what you were saying, you went to Osamech, and then how did you progress? What did you do next after Osamech?
Well, I was loosely involved with the Barbich for a year. I came back to England. I thought I'll try again to start my university degree. It didn't work out yet again. And just can't really be a religious Jew and be in the environment. It's hard to be in the environment. Unless you're solidly rooted. I mean, there are many people got solid rooting in like a religious life, who were born into a religious community, and some can still attend a university degree course and still stay religious, not be influenced.
Yeah.
But I'm a very outgoing person. I like to be warm towards other people and be overt? What's the word? Outgoing. Yeah, outgoing. And the atmosphere in university campuses is very liberal. So and the values, it's like
isn't what fit into yours, yeah.
It's the other way people go to university, and I came university when I came religious back to being an observant Jew when I was in university. They say it's the other way. People from religious backgrounds, they say fry out. They
become less religious.
University, become less religious, or even Islam. Help us.
So after you tried going to university for the second time, what did you do?
And not to be,
After you tried university for the second time, did you go back to yeshiva or back to Jewish college?
But I didn't have the self-discipline to maybe once I'm married, I don't have to rely on my parents' inheritance. I need to.
So after you tried it, what did you do then?
Get some qualification.
So what did you do after you tried doing open university and it didn't work out? Did you go to another Jewish?
I went to yeshiva for a couple of years in America.
Yeah.
And that was in Borough Park, and that was a very Hasidic yeshiva and connected with Breslov. There's a very strong anti-Zionist part.
Which one's this called?
Lev Tahor.
You went to that?
You went to Lev Tahor.
You studied at Lev Tahor?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I said when they were in Borough Park and when they were in Monsey. I was there when the FBI raided into the building there.
You were there in the premises.
Sorry, yes, I was. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of controversy about Lev Tahor.
I'm quite shocked with the FBI. I told them we've got connections. We've got the best connections.
Do you think Lev Tahor radicalized you?
What power you may have, we've got the best connections because we.
Do you think Lev Tahor might have radicalized you or no?
Radicalized?
Yeah.
In what sense?
Because before then, I don't know if you believed everything you now believe, and to go into somewhere where it's a cult, you probably
disagree. I've never heard about Zionism.
Oh, wasn't
that? I haven't heard in Bobov and in the mainstream Breslov.
Yeah.
Mainstream Breslov, the main yeshiva, Rabbi Schechter's Breslov, and from Litvischer people, the traditional Litvischer people who hold it like Rabbi Soloveitchik. And there's nothing that's not mainstream that I learned there regarding Zionism. There's nothing more.
So do you think it changed
nothing more extreme I heard in Lev Tahor Zionism than I've heard.
I mean, but what we've seen about Lev Tahor online is about all the things they've done, about all the abuse they've committed.
You mean the cult? The accusations of abuse?
It's not accusations.
It's complete nonsense.
Why is it nonsense?
I was there when I saw a person who took upon themselves Segifim, which means it's like he to help him fix his
basically to get work.
Someone's allowed to do this. What did he do? Generation.
What did he do? What's that
someone
mean?
With a stick to
hit him,
to flog him, but he chose that upon himself to help him.
No, but they say that the leaders tell people to put that upon themselves in order to repent for their sins, even though that's not true.
Or be kicked out. I wouldn't. From all my experience, I don't think someone would be kicked out if they didn't want to take on something like that. That's from all my experience there.
What about
when they choose to live there are autochthonous of the community there regarding dress code, etc. But I'm pretty sure nobody would be forced to take upon themselves flogging.
Okay, so what about this? Which it isn't allegations. Haven't they been put in prison? The founders of Lev Tahor.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean just as certain Gentiles put them in prison doesn't mean we the court case recently with the son of the present rabbi. This woman. Her husband was the one who defended Madoff, the criminal Madoff, right?
Yeah.
This woman, judge, she's actually an irreligious Jew, and she obviously had it in for most likely had it in for religious Jews anyway, especially.
So you think the court case against them was biased? It wasn't real.
Was it biased?
Sorry.
Was the court case biased?
I'm sure it was biased. Yeah. And most secular Jews are very pro-Israel as well.
So you don't think there was anything wrong with what's happening in Lev Tahor?
And they called it child sex trafficking. How's it child sex trafficking? Why they're not arresting the child abusers going to schools and teach children that gay people are born gay?
But that doesn't mean
it's very different.
That is child abuse.
No, but just because you might think that is counted as child abuse doesn't mean. The one doesn't qualify for the other. Just if the one thing.
Doesn't want to be married at 14, 15, 16.
So
but it's when 18-year-olds are marrying 12-year-olds.
Jewish law, there's nothing wrong with it.
So
it's very unusual.
What I saw in this documentary about it, and you could tell me it was fake, but also that the rabbi in charge of Lev Tahar, in charge of that cult, would sign up these young people to get married, 14, 15, like you said, and they didn't have a choice. Yeah, but it's not normal now.
Dr. Ebbing from Manchester.
That's not normal now.
His wife's, his mother-in-law was engaged at something like 12 in Iran.
But doesn't mean it's right in Iran.
What do you mean in Iran? It's a Jewish community in Iran. It's a traditional Jewish community. They weren't doing it because the local laws were like that. The traditional Jewish Sephardic community, not Sephardic, I mean Oriental community.
No, but just because
we don't go by the modernity. We don't go by the times. You know, the values are dropping, aren't they? They're not. You don't go with the flow. Jews don't go with the flow. We're not supposed to.
So, but you don't have a choice. The whole point is, and when you're that young, you don't have a choice to really do what you want to do. When you're 14 and you get married by that rabbi, that you don't have a choice. That's being forced. That's abuse.
So that's like saying his family mentioned earlier that his mother-in-law was forced.
Not
forced.
Were they?
It is. When you're that young, you don't have a choice. You're not thinking.
By Jewish law, you mature. Adults mature at 12, and the boys mature at 13. And he's
not enough to make such a lifelong choice. Not enough to make such a. I mean, legally, it's 18.
That's nothing to do with us. That's the law of the Gentile land we're dwelling in. And actually, in many states, the actual marriage took place at an age, whatever country or state they were in.
I saw that. Yeah,
that was in line with the local laws.
Yeah.
Okay. The marriage that took place when
the legal marriage.
Yeah. With the fitted in with the local. Because obviously we have to obey the laws of the land, and unless it interferes with our spiritual well-being, we have to obey the laws of the land while we're in exile. So.
There were stories though of people being forced to get married. Were like 18, 19, 20 to like 14-year-old girls.
You can't force anybody because it has to be a free decision. That's why you have to.
So from your personal experience, was it a free decision, or was it not free, or was it just forced into marriage?
I believe it's their free decision.
At 14.
No, but nothing there is a free decision because their entire life they've been told what to do and been forced to do things, and they have to go according to what the leaders are telling them to do.
People being told what to do in the culture we live in now.
Two wrongs don't make a right. Two wrongs don't make a right.
Told, to believe that vaccines are good for people.
But two wrongs don't make a right.
The vaccines are more harm than good.
Well, do you think the vaccines are...
We're being educated.
Did you take the COVID vaccine?
No, I didn't. I will never do.
Why not?
Like I didn't take the swine flu vaccine because I knew it was a nonsense. They said 10 years ago during the swine flu so-called epidemic that they said 100,000 or more on a diet, and it was like maybe 10,000, and then it fizzled out. And I knew what joke it was then, so I didn't take it this time around as well. I knew it was that they're trying to put another fast one.
What do you mean a fast one? What are they trying to pull?
To trick us.
To trick us to do what?
But what do you think the vaccines were actually doing, though?
Sorry?
What do you think the vaccines were actually doing?
The vaccines? There's a tiny minority of people who've got pre-existing conditions who are sensitive in terms of like having a severe infection that could be life-threatening, and for them it's quite probable that the benefits of the vaccine would outweigh the dangers of the vaccine.
No, but by the government giving it to us. Yeah, but by the government giving it to us, what are they trying to accomplish if it doesn't help us?
It's a form of control, isn't it?
How?
To mandate vaccines, they might start mandating other things as well.
No, but just the vaccines in itself, isn't it?
It's a gateway towards other...
First of all, I mean, it wasn't fully mandated. You didn't have to do it. Second of all, how's it a form of control by offering us this?
Well, to offer COVID passes and things, it's a way of controlling, isn't
it? The COVID passes is a separate point.
They wanted to do it.
No, but the actual COVID vaccines, they almost did. And that's wicked.
And they've still got laws in place introduced under the whole through the whole period of the COVID that they're using to increase totalitarianism in other areas.
No, what about the COVID vaccine
like
specific?
Passport, for example.
Yeah, I understand, but specifically the COVID vaccine. Specifically the COVID vaccine. What were they trying to accomplish? How are they getting control by just offering you the vaccine? What's the control?
Well, for example, in Australia, already even before the COVID, there were if parents did not have their child fully vaccinated, they didn't get didn't just debt-free store legislation, but government benefits, government support.
Yeah, but with the COVID vaccine in the UK, what are they trying to accomplish by saying people should have the COVID? But what are they how's their formal control in the UK by saying you can have the vaccine if you want to? I don't see where there's
a... Yeah. It wasn't like that.
It was. You didn't.
Thousands of people lost their jobs. There was about 20% of the medical...
Yeah, but this is away from the fact of the vaccine.
On the edge, and then one brave doctor stood up to this...
This is very different to the vaccine.
That's an NHS when you have to... When you're a doctor... When you have to be healthy and you can't spread around anything.
The common cold, the flu vaccine, they didn't force on doctors.
Yeah, but what was by saying that... So that we could look at it from your perspective...
These doctors, the overwhelming majority of doctors and nurses had natural immunity and healthcare workers.
Yeah, so where's the form of control by telling doctors, let's say the vaccine didn't work, right? Let's say it didn't work, so they gave it out.
It doesn't have any effect at all. I'm saying it's not as.
So let's say you give it out to all the people and it doesn't actually help. But what's the point of it? Where's the form of control there? I didn't see. What are they trying to achieve? There's no form of control specifically with that.
Well, there is. I mean, if you, for example, I know a lot of children in the Jewish community. They only got it because they wanted to travel. Not because they believe they needed it.
But there's no control there. What's the fault? There's no. What are they trying to accomplish by saying if you have the COVID vaccine, then you can travel. If you have the COVID vaccine, then you can do all this.
It gets people used to these sorts of.
So it gets used to people.
So that when they introduce other laws later, they're already half used to it anyway. So then they start introducing. We're going to get rid of physical cash. We're going to have digital currency. We're going to be able to track all your transactions, your whereabouts when you made the transactions. It's becoming like. Like China. I'm not saying anything about China's bad, but I mean, it's becoming as totalitarian as
What do you think of China?
As China. It's like a step to indoctrinate us with more severe measures.
Yes. I actually agree with that. I totally agree with that. I think when people say yes to these small things without thinking about it, ultimately it leads them to bigger and bigger decisions that the government make for them, which they would say yeah.
Right,
and there is actually
So you're saying that COVID vaccine more or less on itself is some form of control, but it's leading on people that future down the line and it's letting people...
I mean, it's technically illegal as well. It's illegal.
What's illegal?
The vaccine is illegal.
Why?
It should never have got the emergency use authorization.
Why?
The emergency use authorization is only if there's no safe and effective alternatives, and there were plenty of safe and effective alternatives. For example, I'll give you one very well-known one. I'm not talking about ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine.
Eating bleach like Donald Trump says.
Vicks nasal spray, right? First nasal spray, when used in the first few days of cold symptoms, it can stop it in its tracks, right? The majority of people use it, right? It stops the virus from binding on the membranes, the nuclear membranes. It has an effect like that. Right? So basically, Procter & Gamble that own Vicks, they applied to the licensing in the UK to have permission to tell people to use it for the symptoms in the first few days of symptoms of COVID as well. There's no reason scientifically why it shouldn't be equally as effective.
Yeah, but they didn't know what the virus
was. The cold
was.
virus, which is a coronavirus, which is very similar to the common cold virus. The common cold virus is very similar to the COVID coronavirus. It's also coronavirus, and it's similar enough that there's no reason why it shouldn't have a similar level of protection using this Vicks nasal spray, and they wouldn't allow.
Do you believe the virus was there to start with, or was it made up?
No, but I mean, some people say, I believe there was a virus to start with, yes. For example, there's a lot of sensible things that Jeremy Corbyn's brother, Piers Corbyn, who's a scientist and meteorologist, was saying. And they stuck people next to him in a photo op. It's called a photo op. When you have people,
photo op.
They stuck people next to him, complete idiots, saying it's all 5G. There's no virus at all. It's just 5G.
Oh, that's stupid.
And
that
it
was
makes
stupid.
him look. The fact he's associating with them, it makes him look like an idiot. Whereas he had sensible things that were based in science that he had to say. So it delegitimizes. It takes away his power to.
What do you think of Jeremy Corbyn?
Jeremy Corbyn or Piers Corbyn? I'm speaking now about Piers Corbyn.
Yeah, let's go to Jeremy.
Yeah. I was a good friend of the Jewish community, as many rabbis have said in London.
Why and what?
The person who tried to
by citing Hamas as anti-Semitic,
dismiss that and say that rabbis are being manipulated.
But do not.
The Jewish Chronicle, the main not religious paper of the the Jews in this country said they're not practicing, and it's like the Jewish Chronicle has been going over 100 years. The main paper of what they call the Jewish community. So they said Stanford has found his voice, and this voice is, I don't know what the name of the person. He set himself up as the JCC North. So it wasn't enough for him to be Northeast London, the whole of North London, including Northwest London. It doesn't have a nice highfalutin name, Jewish Community Council, of North London. So this person, he said no, they're manipulating. It was actually Rapado of London wrote a letter about 4 or 5 years ago when this whole thing was going on. These accusations of anti-Semitism, which I think is no worse in Labour, amongst Labour, than it is in the amongst Tories. he said Yom Tov's always been good for the Jewish community. It's very helpful, and he's not an anti-Semite. The fact he has compassion for the Palestinians doesn't mean he hates Jews.
But do you not think by siding by terrorist organisations,
signed it, got death threats as a result. So this person from JCC, the head of JCC in North London, he said, "No, they're manipulating Rapatwa. He's like Alzheimer's. He hasn't. He was very weak physically, but his mind was still sharp. I don't know how he's doing now. So he said they're manipulating him. He's like Alzheimer's, and the Jewish Chronicle decides to believe this person, this little youngster, this upstart, who's like in his early 20s. His father has a movement as an organisation that's supposed to help like wayward youth that are going off from the
less religious,
not less religious, but on the street and maybe whatever. So when he was collecting in the community I used to live in like 12 years ago, I won't say which community that was, I don't know. Yeah, right. He sent leaflets around collecting for his movement to help these boys. And he had a picture on the front page of this leaflet of a boy by the Western Wall in Jerusalem, the Wailing Wall, with tefillin on, which is very nice, very good. It's not tefillin on, that's a phylactery.
Okay, yeah.
But also combined with a Zionist military uniform. And that was meant not meant to be a before picture, that was meant to be an after picture, implying that's an example of a success story of his organisation. So a rabbi that I've been part of their family for the last 31 years in London. He runs the yeshiva now, the Jewish college in the woods in London.
Yeah.
Just outside Hitchin, where I grew up. So he's part of that community. He knows how people believe, even though they're not strongly anti-Zionist as he is, he knows the community. He grew up there from a little boy coming over from Hungary in the 50s. So he said if they use that picture in this community in Stamford Hill, the main community of
the Jewish people,
he said nobody would give a penny to donate for that organisation.
Okay, I understand.
So that shows that's mentioned, whether it was Bells, whether it was Satmar, whether it was Lubavitch, whether it was people not supportive. He knew if that's a success story, that he should be even though he's now religious.
Do you not think supporting?
He's practicing the Zionist religious observance. The fact is, we're combined with his Zionist military uniform.
Not think Jeremy Corbyn supporting Hamas.
Now it's been softened down. Now he would even get from Satmar.
I understand, but do you not think supporting Hamas? Jeremy Corbyn supported Hamas, which is a terrorist organisation. Do you think Hamas is a terrorist organisation?
Sorry?
Do you think Hamas is a terrorist organisation?
There are people who commit terrorist acts, but
are they a terrorist organisation?
What you label a terrorist act every time civilians are killed.
Well, if
you say deliberately target civilians, then yeah, that's a terrorist act. Yeah.
But the whole organisation is a terrorist organisation. It's not just
soldiers. They call it a terrorist act. No, that's war.
Yeah. No, but it's not just individuals.
The Zionists call it a terrorist act even when they blow up, God forbid, a soldier. Nobody should get hurt. Not another Hamas person, or not another. I don't want anyone more to die. I want all this bloodshed to stop. Right? But even when Hamas kill an Israeli soldier, they label it, it's terrorist. Right, and they when they kill the Arab, they say it's neutralizing. It's like sanitizing the.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. Do Hamas do things that are considered? Do individuals within Hamas?
Killed, it's warfare, right?
Do the individuals within Hamas commit terrorist organisation? Do individuals within Hamas, of course, do terrorist acts?
If terrorism is deliberately targeting civilians to bring about change,
do you think?
And are they doing that?
What's causing them to do it? What is causing them? Like this poor boy who got shot.
Yeah.
This going to be the top football star of. It can't be accidental. It must be revenge for the embarrassment they had in Qatar. The Football World Cup. There are lots of Israeli journalists there, and when they divulged, and also Israeli football fans, when they revealed that they're from Israel.
Yeah.
They expect everyone to be, we're all at peace now, this so-called peace, and they have the cheek to say it's the Abraham Accords, to use the holy name of our father Abraham, right? To say it's the Abraham Accords, the so-called peace. It's not peace. If the Arab countries, the Arab states, the Gulf states, they want weapons from America, they have to make so-called peace, politically peace, with the Zionist state of Israel, in order to get there, certain conditions. It's not because now all of a sudden they love Zionists. That's not why. That's not what this so-called peace deals are all about, right? So they were shunned when they revealed that they're Israelis. They were shunned and had insults thrown at them in Qatar. So lo and behold, they go and murder this upcoming, going to be like one top football stars of the Palestinians, and I think was it Jenin, one of the West Bank.
Who murdered them?
He was shot dead, and they said it was in a shootout.
By who?
It was in a shootout between
who shot them?
But the two things: there's the big, powerful Israeli army. And there's the.
Is this a reporter that you're referring to?
They made that like it was somehow there's some equivalence between.
Who shot this footballer?
He was shot dead during a so-called shooting.
By who?
By who? Some of these terrorists, these settlers, went to
Jewish Israeli settlers or
settlers in the West Bank, the illegal settlers.
Is that Israeli settlers? You're from?
Zionist settlers in the West Bank. They went to the Neturei Karta,
one of the biggest robbers. Yeah.
And they went there without permission from the Fatah police. And when the Neturei Karta go with the Palestinian flag, they go there with the Palestinian Authority police there in the kosher way, in the correct way. And there's actually a video of that, of them going to visit Neturei Karta with the Palestinian police, accompanying them. It could be some of the locals won't know who these people are. They could get attacked. They might think they're Zionistic Jews, even though they're dressed religiously. Sadly, the Jews now dress religiously and do have very strong Zionistic thoughts. Sadly,
why would you get attacked?
So
why would you get attacked? Because
because they might not know we're Neturei Karta and we're Jews that respect them as the
no, but they would attack you
because
because you're Zionist, right? If
they suspect us being like a Zionistic Jew, not a Jewish Jew.
So by you supporting them, don't you think that supporting those sort of attacks, by supporting Palestinians, don't you think that supporting those sort of attacks where they're just going to attack you just because they think you're Zionist or they think you're pro-Israel?
Well,
don't you think that's causing anti-Semitism?
A lot of Palestinian Arabs. Can you really be surprised and blame them for now having a general feeling of hatred towards Jews when they see a lot of Jews, even those Jews that claim not to be Zionistic, to not speak up at all? I appreciate it's risky even in our community to speak up. We can get attacked, we can get harassment.
Have you got harassed from it?
I've got harassed in the Jewish community. I have more harassment from fellow Jews than I've had from any Gentile.
Really, from fellow Jews?
I once had I was punched when I was,
in Gateshead.
North in Gateshead, yeah. I was a bit cheeky.
What did
I
you
said,
do?
You're British, you're descended from Vikings who invaded this country. I said, because they're originally of Scandinavian descent. A lot of the Georges, blonde hair and blue eyes from Scandinavia. They're from the Viking invasion. So I said, they've been Jews in this country. I said they've been Jews in this country since Roman times. Okay, they came over as slaves. For 2,000 years. You've been here, only 1,000 years, Viking invasions. So these jobs thought it was a bit too cheeky, and they punched me in the face. So it was like, but I shouldn't have been like that. A Jew is not supposed to take for granted his.
Is that the worst thing that's happened to you since you voiced your opinions?
Wrong.
That was voicing an anti-Zionist opinion. That was
just voicing it to the wrong person.
That was being a bit too
cheeky.
Proud of being a British. I feel a British pride. Even though I'm also Jewish.
Yeah.
I'm Jewish. I feel patriotic as well.
That's amazing.
Because I was brought up, we sang Jerusalem. There's a hymn called. You probably don't know what that is.
No.
There's hymn. Many people say it should be made the national anthem. Actually, it's which obviously it mentions Jesus in it as well, but primarily it's most of the words I have a feeling for. To build Jerusalem in this green and pleasant land, which has been now destroyed by some of these wicked politicians. I do feel patriotic towards England. I feel it's it's like, even though my family's only been in 2 generations, I do feel some attachment. How many generations you have to be in a land to feel an attachment to the land? Even though primarily my priority is keeping Jewish law, I don't feel that to be
a conflict,
to be a contradiction to being a loyal Brit, to be loyal to the country. My father's father served in the First World War. I think something like 20% didn't come back. It was a much bigger percentages died than in the Second World War, and he that was voluntarily. He didn't have to serve. It wasn't conscription in the First World War. My father's father was in the cavalry in the First World War. So the horrors he must have seen, and it's, to claim, you can't be blamed for becoming less religious. A lot of people went through the camps. They became less religious. They lost their faith, after.
I'm just wondering, back to the previous question about have you received other abuse aside from that for standing up to what you believe in? Because I might disagree with you. I might disagree with what you believe in, but I would never abuse. That's just you don't abuse someone just because he disagrees. Yeah, exactly. Like what we're doing here. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I can understand someone being angry at me if they think that I'm endangering other Jews. Because many people say by joining in demonstrations, it's one thing saying that we're against the ideology of Zionism, but what is done in the name of Zionism, it doesn't represent Judaism. But it's another thing.
Actually,
marching side by side with
Palestinian.
With members of the Muslim community or Arab community who may want to, some of them may want to, or I'm sure a lot of them sadly do, they want to have no problem with the violent solution to the problem. It's like, if anyone signs there in a demonstration that expressed general animosity towards Jews or encouraging a violent solution to the problem of the Zionist state, I wouldn't stand near such people. In fact, somebody actually put behind us once, they adopted a photo We put "kill Jews wherever you find them," and they had someone that hold it up.
They faked
behind us to make us look like we share.
They edited it in.
They edited it in to make it look like we share that way of solving the issue of the Zionist state to make us look bad. It's like, what's it called? There's some areas where a large sections of the Muslim community that have been accused of setting up like zones of Sharia law where they want to enforce Sharia law and we can't, as Jews, we know we can't force our law onto every country. We can be upset. I mean, we don't want for example, what they call a gay parade. I hate the misuse of the word gay. It's gay.
What do you mean?
It's happy.
But that's the old version of the word. Things change. That's the old version of the word. If
they come in down a street which is like full of synagogues, that'd be very insulting to our community. They must understand we don't encourage animosity and violence towards people who believe in that stuff.
You encourage violence.
Did
you say you encourage or don't encourage?
What?
You encourage.
We don't encourage.
Yeah.
But for us, we consider it abomination. We're allowed to hold it as abomination, and there's no way we don't have that. People influence that on our children. There's no way we don't have that, and even, it's like you wouldn't. For example, a big example is that person who left a pig outside a mosque, which is very insulting, right?
Yeah.
The pig itself is not. There's nothing wrong with a pig. We Jews cannot eat pigs.
Exactly.
Right.
So
a pig is the same law.
That's what it represents.
It's cruelty to pigs as well. It's forbidden to be cruel to a sheep as it is to a pig. But we personally as Jews are not allowed to eat pig. In fact, in the Messiah times it's believed that pork will be kosher. Will be there. Yeah, apparently pork will be kosher. It'll be a kosher animal when the Messiah, after the Messiah, the nature of things will change and the pig will become permitted as a food for a Jew. So the person who did that, he should have got a lot of community service in the Muslim community to learn to behave more respectfully towards Muslims, right? But not put in jail, especially in the jail where there were a lot of other Muslims there, and he got murdered in jail.
Did he?
Oh, really?
In fact, he got a death sentence. So you just thought, surely the legal system in this country must have known that such a person who's done that should not be put in a jail where. Just like
100%. Definitely, that's a death sentence, not a prison sentence.
Who knows whether that was done deliberately to have an effect on how what? Who knows?
Do you think it was deliberately?
I wouldn't put it past them. Yeah, it's ridiculous. How did they make such a blunder to do that?
And as a follow-up question, I know you're very paranoid about people knowing where you are and where you live and all of that, which is not very surprising.
I don't publicise. Yes, I don't.
Because
it's not paranoid. I don't. Why should I increase the chance to put myself at risk?
But do you believe people could actually come at you for your views and lock you up or do something to you
the police
based on false information, as we saw happen?
How are you protesting CST? And CST, just to explain to people listening, that's a security trust, right? Specifically for the Jewish community.
The Jewish community, yeah.
Set up by not from members of the Haredi religious community. It's set by primarily by probably about 50% atheists. Some of them consider themselves religious.
Well, they are Jewish. They're born Jewish. Some might not be
Jews,
but they are.
Spinoza was a Jew. Karl Marx was a Jew. There's nothing to do with religious.
No, but they might not. They might not be so religious, but they are. They are.
Really so religious, atheistic. I mean, it's like
how do you know that?
So religious.
Well, so we actually had the guy who started all.
I think he started. He
ran it for 15, 18 years.
The one that reported confessed where he lied about not. CST said they didn't report to the police when.
Oh, that's one.
Synagogue during the lockdown.
Yeah, that's one.
Socialist distancing.
Yes, I mean, I don't think he's an atheist, but I just don't think he's that religious as other people would be.
He's not orthodox, in other words.
Yeah.
Right, not orthodox. Right.
Does that mean that he can't
run such an organisation? He's pro-Zionist. I'm sure he's pro-Zionist.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah, I don't know him that well, but I presume he is. Yeah.
There's nothing. If Judaism was part of Zionism, collective with Judaism, the more religious you'll be, the more Zionistic you'll be. He's all been set up by rabbis, not by.
And does that mean he can't start such? Does that mean he can't start such a security organisation to help Jewish people?
Run it.
Well, no. They liaise with the Israeli embassy, by the way. They liaise with the Israeli embassy.
So. No, but on the point specifically about him not being so religious.
They support LGTB, which in Jewish law means they're actually endangering, even from a spiritual perspective, they're endangering our community. Because when we were allowed to have wars, kosher wars, like thousands of years ago, that were permitted, it said if there's any lewdness in our camps, any sexual immorality, will be handed over to the enemy. That was in times when there was an actual real enemy. It's like, so they openly support LGTB. So an organisation that openly supports LGBT, even from a spiritual perspective, they're actually endangering our community. Recently a top rabbi in London told me that they're endangered community, and he's connected with security issues. He liaises with police. This rabbi, I'm not going to say his name, Frankel and Eli Hassell. He told me that the Jewish Leadership Council, the one that Halfan's connected with, there's a politician called Halfan who's an education minister.
I don't know.
So he's been pushing, teaching many terrible things to...
teaching LGBT to young kids.
Forcing on the Jewish schools, things that we don't want to teach our children.
Do you not take the view that whether you support LGBT
he's
or not, whether you support...
CST. The same trustees of the
Jewish
Leadership Council, the pressure, the same rabbi that told me CST is actually endangering the community.
Yeah, but do you not see...
They pressured him for 1 hour to lie about Jeremy Corbyn.
What their point of view...
And Frankel and Eli, and he wouldn't do it. He said no, it's very helpful.
Well, the devil advocate's point of view to what you're saying is that the devil advocate's point of view to what you're saying is that whether you believe in LGBT or not, whether you think that's a good thing or not, you should teach it in your schools and teach people how to respect other people by teaching them about other people aside from your own. And that's also, if you don't teach people aside from your own, then it's indoctrination. Then you're just living that, keeping them in a bubble. Do you get what I'm saying?
You mean they're more likely to be violent towards such people if they're not taught these things?
That's what I'm saying.
We don't even teach about kosher sex. We don't even teach about we don't even teach about heterosexual sex to a Jewish child until they're engaged to be married. We don't teach that subject at all. Let alone teach about these things to primary school children.
Okay, so let's talk about point. Do you think it's right for you to teach someone younger, whether you agree with it or not, just teach them about other stuff aside from their own beliefs, and teach them so that they respect other things?
Yeah, but they hear in the Torah that that's an abomination from the Torah.
You can teach, but you can teach them it, but just say it's not the right thing. It's not something that we believe in.
That's like saying we have to be respectful to idolaters, but we personally do not bring idolatry. We have to be respectful to idolaters and murderers and people who commit incest and bestiality, but we personally are not allowed to do it.
You'll put all of that in the same...
What's wrong with that? I mean, they're all capital crimes, aren't they? I mean, technically speaking, sadly the Prince of Wales, the new king, he's the victim of the low standards of his generation, but technically he committed adultery. Adultery is a capital offence, right?
Yeah.
So he's Jewish law, the head of the Church of England. So I mean, can you imagine someone who committed adultery being a rabbi?
Is adultery and killing on the same level as being gay?
Well,
and he openly admitted that to himself. At least he was open about it. But what I'm upset with him about is he shouldn't have criticised his brother. His brother, was guilty of maybe immodesty on Epstein's island. A modesty with a girl who was lightly under 18, not some 14-year-old who was raped. It was maybe a bit of a modest behaviour with a young lady who was under 18, a bit under 18. Right, but what he did is much more severe. So he shouldn't have been he was in no position to treat his brother so harshly and basically expel him from the royal family from all positions there. The present King Charles, right? I'm not judgmental. He's a victim of his. In today's society, it's not frowned upon anymore. Adultery. It's not.
I think it is. It is. It definitely is.
Well, not as much, anywhere near as much it used to be, right?
I don't know the comparison.
It's been right. It's not. In fact, already, I think 50, 60, maybe 100 years ago, it was called a clubhold. The poor man whose wife had been unfaithful.
Oh, okay.
And committed adultery with another man. The woman was married.
Yeah.
The man should not have relations. She should not have relations with him. Also, on two sides, they're both put to death on Jewish law, aren't they? They've had 2 warnings, which have to have any capital offence. It's the man and the woman are put.
Which man and woman?
The woman who's married. The woman who is a married woman.
Who
plus the man, any man,
else.
whether that man was married or not, is irrelevant. The other man with the married woman, both parties would be put to death in Jewish law if they'd had 2 warnings and. There's and they still carry on,
So do you believe in capital punishment? Do you believe that's just
capital punishment? When today's generation is hard to, you can't, like 2,000 years ago when the Romans were occupying the Holy Land and they made it hard they forbade teaching Jewish law on punishment. It was like a penalty of death, wasn't it? Death penalty to keep up religious learning. The standards dropped, so the rabbis the Sanhedrin didn't trust themselves anymore to hand up the fine judgment involved in passing on the death penalty, so they abolished the death penalty at that point. So it's I believe in today's society, no, you shouldn't. I can't think of many situations where you can have, because there's always a chance they can make a mistake as well, and it's even a small chance. To take away someone's life is a very severe thing, but yeah.
Do you not think what Leif Dahar did was basically taking away people's lives with the abuse they did to people?
Who said they did abuse? Who said they did abuse?
See,
that's...
Now, many reported stories of abuse being done.
So I say, if you think this is whole, like, all of this was being against Leif Dahar and it wasn't actually real, why was all this done against Leif Dahar?
I'm sure Zionists had it in for them as well.
Zionists specifically?
I'm sure Zionists specifically had it in for them as well, because they're very, very outspoken against the Zionist state. And there was even someone from a big Dera Chassid from the Aguda who came over. Aguda is like a party in the Zionist government, even though technically they consider themselves not Zionists. They're just there to minimise the damage to religious life in the Holy Land. Over time, they've been influenced by the Zionists. That's because when you mix with people, you get influenced by them, right?
Like you were saying about university and other stuff. Like you were saying
about
university.
The university campus. I mean, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, 3 Rebbes, the Rebbe Rashab from Lubavitch, I was shown in a sefer in the book that was the Baltimore one that he wrote. That already in the 20s he stopped attending the Aguda conventions. The Aguda then was almost like the Neturei Karta, the Aguda Yisrael, but they saw where it was heading. He said he's not going anymore to conventions of the Aguda Yisrael. And Aguda was actually set up primarily initially to fight Zionism. That was way before the state was even formed.
Yeah.
But in fact, there was a good rabbi who was believed to be murdered by the Zionists. It was the brother of the rabbi that set up Neturei Karta, who also was part of
by Jewish Zionists or non-Jewish Zionists?
By Jewish Zionists. He's believed to have been poisoned on a ship. He was heading to England to speak to Churchill and other British leaders to explain the Zionists are not our leadership. They don't represent us. The Jews in the Holy Land want to live there under the Gentiles, whether it was the Turks, whether it was the British, after the First World War, had the mandate there to administer. They didn't. Again, another mistake. Britain never conquered Palestine. It was a mandate. It was just to administer the land. It should be law and order, while working out a long-term solution to the situation there. They didn't conquer the Holy Land, so they had no right to hand over chunks of land to anyone because it wasn't their land. And so that's a separate issue. But Rabbi Moshe Blau was one of the top 2 or 3 members of leading the Aguda Yisrael. And his brother, Rabbi Armin Blau, was the head of the Aguda youth movement. He was the one who broke away to start up the Neturei Karta. Rabbi Moshe Blau was on a ship to England and he got poisoned while he was on the ship. And in fact, the rabbi that took me in that I mentioned earlier regarding this leaflet that went around, you
mentioned before that you got people.
Yeah, this rabbi, his wife met an Iranian lady, an Iranian Gentile lady, who was on that same ship, who remembered a rabbi dying on the ship, taking ill and dying, but she didn't know that he's believed to have been poisoned because he was on a mission. Just like Yaakov Yisrael Dahan was murdered by the Zionists, he was shot by one of he became later the prime minister of the country. Somebody Ben-Ami, is it Shlomo Ben-Ami? The one who so-called saved the Aleppo Codex. There's a thing called the Aleppo Codex in Syria. It's like a very old sefer going back 1,000 years about the writing of how to write a Sefer Torah, the Jewish scroll of the 5 books of Moses. And the Eish Torah, one of what they call the Kiruv Moistos, to help people come back to Jews to come back to religious observance.
Is it the one that's currently up now?
Aish.
You're talking about Aish, the one currently.
Aish.
Oh yeah, we did a podcast with a guy in charge.
The assassination of Yaakov Yisrael Dahan. He was the one who gave the order to murder him, and they're praising him for.
Who? The guy who runs Aish?
No. There's an article on their website praising this.
Praising
this Ben-Ami. I think his name's Ben-Ami. It was in the 20s when Yaakov Yisrael Dahan from Amsterdam was murdered. Yeah. He was working. He spoke fluent. In the beginning, he was mixed in with Zionism. Then he came around to be like the right-hand man of Rav Sonnenfeld, one of the main two or 3 rabbis of Jerusalem. There was a Sephardi community also. So he went on missions to. There's photos of him in like a traditional Arab dress with the head and everything, the white, And he went to various Arab leaders to explain the traditional Orthodox position regarding Zionism. How we're happy to live there under their leadership, and we're not associated in any way with the Zionist movement and what they do. And he got murdered. He got shot dead. And when he was coming out, he was davening in Sharet Tzedek Hospital. In the davening mincha, he came out after davening in the afternoon, praying the afternoon service, and he got murdered. Someone came by on a motorbike and shot him dead. And they found out eventually they made up some false accusation that it was an Arab who believed that he'd molested his son. Because there's a possibility that before he did Shuvah, before he came back to be an observant Jew, and risking his life for the sake of Judaism and helping Rabbi Sonnenfeld, there's a possibility, because he was a famous poet in Amsterdam. That's one of the so-called memorials in Amsterdam. Is actually an insult to his memory. It's the people who call themselves the gay community. They see him as one of the early famous people, the community of Amsterdam, because they say he was gay when he was young. They say some of his poetry he was pro this type of behaviour. But let's say, God forbid, this is true that in his younger years he was he straightened himself out. That's there's actually another memorial which doesn't associate with that at all. And that's why I've been sometimes. When I was there once, and some Jewish people came by and they said there was somebody who was in his 70s, and he said, "Yeah, your group, you handed over the Ergun to the British authorities," and the Ergun was like the right wing. It's like the group that Likud is like heavily associated with, the right wing branch of Zionism, which actually its founder was very anti-religious, very against the religious community as well. He saw Vladimir Jabotinsky said a religious Jew is an ugly thing. It's an edel little zach in Yiddish. He also felt the secularization of Jews was like the salvation of the Jewish people, to take us to strip us of Judaism. But any Christian would understand, part of being a Jew is to keep Judaism. It's not that's being Jewish. It's not like a racial thing. It's not in your blood to be a Jew.
Yeah.
And you're a Jew either because your mother was Jewish or
if we go back to before we said that before you said that when you go to protest that pro-Palestine or something, when you go to such protests, a lot of times you have Jewish people, other type of people that come up to you and may harm violence or may do something that shouldn't be done
against me being
anti-Zionist. Yeah.
Right.
Do you think that violence is ever the answer?
No.
No.
I mean, there's one-on-one direct self-defense. But
aside from self-defense, let's say you see someone putting something up that you disagree with. Do you think it's right to go and tear that stuff up, or to steal it and to break it and that sort of stuff?
If someone's putting out,
let's say
if I'm putting out what they call dangerous misinformation,
yeah,
and I believe it is really dangerous misinformation, I will. For example, I went into North Manchester General Hospital. I was visiting a friend there. It's another story. My friend who was locked up there for 3 years, basically. It's a whole, it's a whole separate story.
Yes, about the hospital.
So I went to visit him, and there was a sign there saying, this is already only half a year ago, it was still saying, remember to wear your mask and do social distancing and all this rubbish. It doesn't really, which legally actually doesn't apply at all anymore. And I folded up a bit of paper, some leaflet, and I hanged it over the bit of plastic as you come in.
Yeah.
And I did that on a Wednesday or Thursday. I came in on Monday, Tuesday, it was still there. Probably the doctors were very happy someone had covered it over, but they themselves cannot do that, because if they speak up, they could lose their license, like that poor doctor, what's his name? I can't remember. There's a doctor who lost his license
for speaking out
from North Manchester General, and he was a heart surgeon as well. He wasn't just a general doctor. He was some specialist, and he said more people are going to die from the measures they're introducing than the actual virus itself.
So what I mean by is violence have the answer. The reason why I asked you that question is because if
he lost his license for 3 years, he hasn't got it back. His doctor.
I understand that, but the reason why I asked that question is violence have the answer? Because if you see someone at pro-Israel, like a pro-Israel fan, and they're holding a flag, would you take it off them, or something along those lines? So I'm just saying,
pros and they're holding a flag.
If someone's holding an Israeli flag,
would you? If they want to make fools of themselves, I would. I wouldn't feel if someone ran down, say up, for example, Northumberland Street, which every single shul there is an anti-Zionist shul. It's like someone stand outside Steen Clot. I say that's their business. Even the rabbi of Steen Clot, by the way, the previous rabbi Brody, the previous rabbi who passed away. Passed on. He was nifta like a few years ago. He said, I don't like this sign in the synagogue that says we support Israel. I mean, that's even worse, says we support the Zionist military. The sign that
was
says,
he also an anti-Zionist?
He said, I don't want that there. Yeah. If I take that off, the people who pray are just going to disappear. I wouldn't be able to happen in other basics of keeping Yiddish. It could affect their... There's a lot of rabbis nowadays, they're afraid to speak out. They know the correct position regarding Zionism, but they're afraid to speak out about it because they feel I can't help, then I won't be in a position to help my community in other issues, and Yiddish to help them out, to stay strong in religious observance. If I speak out too strongly against... They would never imply they're pro-Zionist or pro-the-state, but to speak up too strongly. So there are rabbis that also help to criticise the Neturei Karta, because they're pressured to come up with these statements if they don't. For example, the rabbi of Chodesh Shul in Northumberland,
the Chodesh synagogue,
the Chodesh synagogue, he was in prison with Rabbi. He merited being in prison. He was zocher to be in prison with Rabbi Blau, the head of the Neturei Karta it must have been in the 50s when he was a boy.
Why?
Yeshiva.
Why did he get to prison?
For attending protests.
Oh, really?
In the Zionist state. He was imprisoned. And he was pressured about, was it 10 years ago when they went to Iran? The so-called Holocaust Denial Conference? It was to say that we should be free to speak about the Holocaust and discuss it, because if it's being used, in a strong way being felt that it's being used to enable the Zionists to get away with what they get away with.
Yeah.
for them to effectively hide behind. Then they've got reason if they wanted to question either the numbers or how it was done or who helped to cause the Holocaust in the first place, or even with the indoctrination of the German people, through Nazism, who helped to plan and organise all this. To look at it and analyse it and look, it's like it's like we should be free to speak. If someone said, for example, the Rwandan genocide, about 1 million people were killed because of who they were, between the Tutsis and the Hutus, right?
Yeah.
Someone can go in the street and say there wasn't any Rwandan, not to say it was only 500,000 or it was 100,000. It just didn't happen at all. It's a complete lie. It never happened. Nothing would happen to them legally, right? They're free to say. So why shouldn't people be free to say, if they want something stupid, say the Holocaust didn't happen, not one person died, let them make fools of themselves. What the people who mainly benefit from the Holocaust, which is the Zionist regime and the Zionist ideology, they have to keep it suppressed. That you mustn't ask questions about this. It's like a holy cow. You mustn't touch this subject.
Yes, that's what.
And it was the Zionist leadership that put this 6 million number. There's actually one rabbi was saying it was necessarily less. It could have been as much as 10 million.
Well, they
the
lied.
Meitzah saved 40,000.
Well, they lied.
And the Zionists got in the way of him saving them. The Zionists, the Mina Meitzah, Rabbi Michal
You're talking about the Holocaust now.
Right, he said it's probably close to 10 million died.
More than that, yeah.
Or through mass shootings.
So more than 6 million, it's 10 million.
It could have been as much as 10 million, but the number 6 million, which I believe has some religious significance as well. Sits Shesh Elef Elofim, or has some biblical some significance. So this number was in the New York Times in 1907 or 1910. It was before even the First World War, and like every few years it was either New York Times or Chicago Tribune, and it was actually Zionist leadership were publishing like 6 million died from. Then it was pogroms in Russia, and then it was in the First World War, starvation. It was always 6 million, 6 million, 6 million, and therefore you must support Zionism basically. And one of them even said there's 6 million bleeding and suffering reasons to justify Zionism. They said blatantly, way before the Second World War even started, let alone the actual Holocaust was known about. So I'm saying it makes you think what's going on, and maybe this was all pre-planned and organised.
Well, they caused it.
So
He's saying they planned it.
Can get their Western puppet. They can get the puppet state called the State of Israel. I mean, Gordon Brown, he said openly, he let what Freudian slip is?
No.
It's where you let the cat out the bag. You make a mistake.
Yeah.
You let what you're really thinking. He was interviewed about the Afghanistan, Iraq. The war that Tony Blair was involved in, letting happen basically, along with Bush.
It's like when George Bush was. I remember it was like on the news around half a year ago when he was giving a speech, and he accidentally said, "I was the one that caused what happened in Iran." I think,
he accidentally.
Actually.
People say
or something. Yeah.
Gordon Brown said, "When Israel attacked Syria, regarding they expected they were developing nuclear missiles there. Some military 10, 15 years ago.
Could that not have just been a slip of the tongue?
Israel attacked
Syria. Not just have been a
slip
slip
on behalf of certain Western imperialist interests.
Do you think there's a bigger agenda?
Could that not have just been an accidental slip up from his words? Could that not have just been an accident by saying that?
Well, I don't think so, because I know from many other sources that this is why.
This is just an additional confirmation.
Zionism in the first place.
He's saying there's a bigger agenda around it.
Yeah, because it wasn't Jews that set up Zionism. People think of Herzl and Klein Weizmann, but the British imperialists were speaking about this.
Why would someone set up? What do they have to gain by setting this up? This movement up?
Well, there's from certain types of Christians that they feel this will bring about the second coming.
Yeah. By
having all the Jews returning they don't care to be a bloodbath between Jew and Arab. They just think that all Jews have to return. There was actually a British evangelical minister said 500 years ago we have to basically manipulate the Jews, go re-establish sovereignty in the Holy Land, and that will bring about the second coming. That's for them their priority. These evangelicals in America that give millions and millions to the.
So you're saying this is set by Christians?
They don't give two hoots about Jewish lives. I mean, maybe I'm talking about leadership. Then there's the people lower down the ladder. Same people say about Freemasonry. There's like people who the only religious member of my family. They kept the Sabbath and kashrus at least, a kosher diet, and he was actually a Freemason. But I don't believe he was like on the high level of Freemasonry. If he was, I don't think he could. He should really be able to realise that is not compatible with being an observant Jew, being a high-level Freemason. But people on low levels think it's some just fraternal, charitable organisation. He was a very nice man, my Uncle Ralph, in Southend in Westcliff.
Do you mind if we talk about Russia and Ukraine?
Russia and Ukraine.
Because the whole...
Did I finish, because there was a point, did I finish it correct?
I think so, yeah. I think you've finished one more...
explain enough. No, so I would go from tangent a lot.
No, it's okay. I think...
Yeah, I think we've spoken about a lot, haven't we?
Yeah, no, I think it's about Russia versus Ukraine. I mean, we've had a conversation before, but a lot of what the media says is very, very pro-Ukraine. And although I might agree with them, I'd still love to give you an opportunity to talk to people and show the other side. If you want to give that a shot.
About Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah,
because as I believe you support Russia and Putin.
It's not I support Russia like on the expense of Ukraine. I think Ukraine is being used by NATO to attack Russia and reignite the Cold War. You know, Cold War was very good for the arms industry. You know, it's about hundreds of billions. It's similar level of profit to the
so it's promoted by money.
The pharmaceutical industry, right? The drugs industry is similar. It's about hundreds of billions a year profit, not just sales profit.
So it's the arms industry funding NATO to cause this.
I believe that's part of it. Is that I mean, they do have a big lobbying power, don't they? If they're making hundreds of billions a year, they do have big lobbying power.
Yeah. No, definitely, 100% they do. I don't know if they're trying to cause this. I doubt it, but they definitely probably do have a very big lobbying power if they've got that much money.
There's actually a Jewish activist, name's Medea Benjamin. She's a Jewish lady. I don't know how observant she is, but she's like Jewish. She's born Jewish.
Yeah.
It's a pro-Palestine activist, and she said in an interview a few months ago that Zelensky was threatened to be hanged if he dare make peace with Putin.
You think that?
Really?
Yeah, it was threatened by apparently members of the Azov brigade.
Who's that? Who's the Azov?
What a source was.
Who's the Azov brigade?
That's a very nationalistic branch of the Ukrainian military. That's from what I understand, from what I've heard, and they say they've got Nazi roots that they collaborated with the Nazis during the Second World War.
Who, Ukraine?
No, the Azov. That's the origins.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that people who are associated with it now have a bad feeling towards Jews. Doesn't mean that, but they say that it's not, and they still apparently the swastika is still used. Apparently,
really.
I'm saying apparently. I don't know 100%. It's like it's a very nationalistic. There's nothing wrong being nationalistic if you know as long as you're.
So why are Ukraine in the wrong? Are Ukraine in the wrong? And if yes, why?
I believe Ukraine being taken advantage of.
Why? How? All the questions why, how, where.
NATO don't have a clean record, obviously. Yugoslavia, Iraq, Afghanistan, they've invaded a lot of countries, right? So
who NATO have? I mean, people that are part of it.
1 million people dead in the last 30 years. Yeah, it's like large numbers of deaths, and it's like, you know, are they in really a position to start criticising Russia that all they wanted to do was help other people in Donetsk that wanted to rejoin? But they weren't looking at it's absolute nonsense. It was not that Putin was trying to conquer all of Ukraine. Yeah, but it was the east of Ukraine, it was Donetsk and Donbass, and that as far from what I've learned over the past few years, well, maybe 5-6 years, that they want culturally to be so closely aligned with Russia. They didn't even want to break away from Ukraine. They just wanted to be is this
specific points of Ukraine?
Region.
Is this specific points of Ukraine?
Join Russia, but they
Is this specific points of Ukraine? Is this some specific parts of Ukraine?
Yes, East Ukraine.
When was this that you said that?
It's ever since the revolution, which
revolution? Which one?
10 years ago.
6 or 7 years ago.
Oh, in 2014.
When the pro-Russia
when they took over.
Was kicked out. Yeah.
He
was kicked out, and which a certain Western imperialist nation.
No, but if
promoted that revolution.
You said if Putin invades even countries that are okay with Putin and okay with Russia, that's still invading and that's still a war crime.
Yeah, but you could argue he was invited in by the.
But it's still a war crime at the end of the day. You can say whatever you want. It's still a war crime to invade another country. You can be invited in. It's still a war crime.
Technically.
It's not technically.
Yeah,
it is. It is something.
Literally.
It's just literally as a war crime. You can say whatever you want, but it's a war crime, and that's his fault. He committed a war crime. He should be punished for that. Do you not think so?
He saw himself as helping the people.
But he still committed a war crime. He still went into another country and invaded them. That's still a war crime because he might be helping another person.
Yeah,
but
if China started to have strong relations with Canada, and they were planning to put missile launchers on the border with
we can't.
having Chinese military bases in China.
Yeah.
Do you think we'd ever get to that stage? America would invade Canada.
Well,
NATO want to.
Is that our self?
No, hopefully we won't. We don't want to invade it. We will put special operations within it to take over certain things that are
special
wrong.
operations, isn't that the term that Putin used?
Yeah.
Yours is a special operation. That's the term that Putin used. I'm just making a special operation.
Like special
he didn't
operation.
even call it a war. He called it a special operation.
What I mean by special operations. Okay, maybe it's the wrong word to use. What Putin knew, but I meant like to take it special operations and not to take over the whole country, not to invade it, but just to stop that specific thing that's happening.
Happening in Canada.
Yeah, so let's say that.
That's what they wanted to do in Donetsk and Donbass.
But do you get my point? It's still a war crime. No matter what you're saying, it's still a war crime.
Despite the reason why they want to do it.
It's still a war crime.
It's still invading another country.
Yeah.
It is still invading another country.
So he should face a punishment of that.
But it's certainly no worse than British forces and American forces and French forces invading Libya and Syria.
You keep mentioning that things are no worse, but why does that matter?
No, but I get that.
They say they don't need to help the local people as well. They said they don't need to help the local people. It could be more about oil and opium poppers fields in Afghanistan. Who knows whether it's really because they really care.
I mean, listen, we need to
go
on.
Many Jews who say the Jews were much better under, no matter how much of a tyrant Saddam might have been, there's clear evidence that Jews were better under Saddam than they are now.
Listen, we could do.
Let's do. Somebody's community passed away in Baghdad a year or two ago. Somebody lives actually in Broom Lane.
No voice out. But two wrongs don't make a right. You can't just say just because this is a war crime, that's okay. Do you get what I'm saying? So we can go 1 point at a time because this was bad. He deserves to be punished. Putin deserves to.
Two guys don't make a right.
But you could also go
in no position at all to be critical of what Russia's doing. They're in no position, considering their history of the last 30 years. They're absolutely in no position to be critical of what Russia's doing.
So who should uphold judgment?
Who should
uphold judgment in world peace?
Who should uphold judgment in world peace?
Yeah.
Well, the UN think that's their job, don't they? The UN.
Yeah. I presume you don't like UN too much. I presume you don't like the UN too much.
Well, the UN. Not everything the UN does is right.
Do you think it's ever
possible?
The UN
voted to recognise the state of Israel, didn't they? But a lot of the small countries that built up the numbers of votes were actually bullied into that position.
Do you think it's ever possible to have something like the UN or NATO or something, an organisation as big as that does everything right? And never does any. It's impossible, isn't it?
And they'll only be perfect when Messiah comes, and then we will.
No, but in the current world,
what man does can never be is always fallible.
Yeah,
is always. It will never be perfect until the end times. Until it happens, until the Messiah comes, and never.
Okay, so
there will always be. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Do you mind? Let's finish off then too now. It's really interesting.
Thank you so much for coming on Pesach.
Thanks. Although I disagree with a lot of what you say, I just respect that you're standing up for what you believe in, no matter what. So thanks so much for coming and having a conversation.